Hi, friends. It is April 14th, and we are doing G1 today, reading and understanding informational passages. Now, we've talked about this every single day, but we're going to review it again just to make sure we're all clear. Remember that every piece of writing that's ever been written has a purpose. And when we're thinking about author's purpose, we think, well, that's easy as pie. We know that one purpose could be to persuade you about something, another one could be to inform you. The last option could be to entertain you. So when we're thinking about what our author's purpose is, we know that persuading means the author is trying to convince you of something. We know that if the author is informing us, they are just telling us about a topic or an event. And we know that within that heading of informative text, there's 5 main types of text. There's compare and contrasting, sequential, description, problem solution, and cause and effect. We know all of those types of writing fall under the informative umbrella. The last type of writing is entertaining writing. And this is when the author's purpose is simply to keep you laughing, smiling, engaged, entertained. There's a plot, basic elements of storytelling. The author is wanting to make the reader happy or to entertain them. Now, as we're looking at informational passages, we're going to follow some steps. So when you're working on your own, I would write these steps down on a piece of paper so that as you're working through G1, you're answering these steps on your own so you can come up with the correct answers. Let's do a sample together. Now, as you can see, I've pulled up G1, Reading and Understanding Informational Passages here. The title of our passage is Medical Mystery. So I'm wondering still, because this doesn't tell me the purpose yet, I'm going to have to read a little bit, but that does give me a hint about the topic. The topic may have something to do with medicine. Let's read and see. In autumn of 1975, 2 mothers in Lyme, Connecticut were desperate for answers that their doctors could not provide. Their families and others in the Lyme area were suffering from a mysterious illness with symptoms such as headaches, skin rashes, swollen knees, fever, and fatigue. The woman contacted the Connecticut State Department of Health and the Yale School of Medicine for help. 2 doctors from Yale, Alan Steer and Stephen Malafista, began an investigation that would result in a groundbreaking medical discovery. The doctors began by conducting individual examinations of each patient. They found patients of all ages were suffering from a set of symptoms rarely observed together. In particular, there was a high rate of arthritis, a painful joint condition. Blood samples revealed no virus or germ that offered a clue about the cause. This sounds very similar to coronavirus as I read. I'm really glad to know this is not the same thing. However, Dr. Steer and Dr. Malafista found fruitful information in their interviews with patients. 1/4 of them, that's 25% of them, were called a skin rash with a bullseye pattern about 4 weeks before the arthritic symptoms arose. Armed with this new clue, the Department of Health worked with the Yale doctors, conducting surveys to learn where the disease was most widely seen. It seemed that the majority of patients lived in heavily wooded areas, away from the center of town. Other similarities were soon discovered. The symptoms were nearly always experienced for the first time during the summer. Most patients were people who spent a good deal of time outdoors, gardening, landscaping, or playing. Crucially, some recalled having been bitten by a tick. We're going to pause here. Now, I think I can already fill out the first part of my text on the left. If I'm looking for author's purpose, I already know that it's not a persuasive text. The author isn't trying to convince me of anything. I also know this is not an entertaining story, but rather this is an informative text. The author is telling me about this weird medical illness that these people had in this particular area, and I don't necessarily know what type of text he's using, whether it's compare, contrast, sequential, description, problem solution, or cause and effect, but I do know he's informing us. So here on author's purpose line, we're going to write to inform. We also know the topic. The topic is this unknown disease and illness and how it came about in a particular area of the country. So here under topic, I write a mystery illness in Lyme, Connecticut, because that's exactly what our author's informing us about. Now, the last thing we're looking for is what we think the most important thing the author wants me to remember about this passage. I've read a lot of information so far, but most of it's just been about how they noticed the disease and how people came to realize that there was a pattern. Let's see if there's something really important that we can take away as we finish off the article, recognizing that most often, the most important thing the author wants us to remember is found either at the beginning of the passage or at the end, or a combo of both. A scientist named Willy Bergdorfer later began inspecting the deer ticks that had been preserved by Lyme officials. In 1982, he discovered a specific type of bacteria carried by the deer tick that was causing the disease. This remarkable find prompted an important question. How did deer ticks acquire the bacteria in the first place? As reports of Lyme disease spread across the northeastern United States, there was a new urgency to answer the question. Finally, scientists determined that the ticks picked up the bacteria from their hosts. As its name suggests, the deer tick often feeds on deer, carriers of the Lyme disease bacteria. Rodents such as mice were another useful food source for the tick, and they were also frequently carriers of the bacteria. Scientists concluded that the bacteria passed from wildlife to tick to human, and all lived closely among one another in the area. How could a disease from a common parasite spring up so suddenly? Many areas of the Northeast, including Lyme, Connecticut, were once farmland. The farmland was replanted with trees. After the forest grew in, the area then developed with houses. Gradually, neighborhoods pushed deeper into the habitat of deer ticks and, more importantly, the wildlife they feed upon. As humans encountered more ticks, they became more likely to contract the disease. One of the remaining mysteries about Lyme disease is where and when it truly began. This puzzle may never be solved. Evidence now shows that Lyme disease has existed for a long time in different parts of the world. In 1883, a German scientist named Alfred Buchwald observed a skin rash in a patient suffering from what is now known to be Lyme disease. In addition, a 53,000-year-old mummy found in Europe contained the bacteria that causes Lyme disease. Regardless of the disease origin, its cause was successfully identified after the spike in cases of the 1970s. Today, Lyme disease, if caught early, is easily treated with antibiotics, thanks to the hard work of many scientists, doctors, and patients. As I think about the last part of my note-taking, I think about the most important thing the author wants me to remember. Hint, often the most important thing is repeated multiple times and found in the conclusion paragraph. Now down here in the conclusion paragraph, I do see that it says the cause was identified and that today Lyme disease is treatable, which is great. However, I see this word regardless, which indicates that this part here at the beginning may be mostly what the text is about. It says, regardless of the disease origins. Origins means where it started. We know that this entire text has been about how Lyme disease came about and them trying to figure out what the disease was. So, the most important thing being that Lyme disease originated in Lyme, Connecticut, and was discovered through tracing patterns of illness with people who had the same symptoms. My entire text is all about people who developed the same symptoms, and after much research, people figured out the cause, which was these ticks who were transferring the bacteria from animals in heavily wooded areas, especially in Lyme, Connecticut, to their people or the hosts, the bodies. Okay, so the most important thing is found here. Our author's informing us about this illness and the main cause of it as they discovered the patterns. When I look at my question, what is the text about? A, it is about how the cause of Lyme disease was identified. B, it is about how the historical origins of Lyme disease were determined. C, it is about how the correct treatment of Lyme disease was discovered. Well, I know it's not C because that's not even mentioned till the last paragraph of our entire text. We don't even see them talk about how it's cured. 1 and 2 are close together. I think it's number 1 because the second one says it is about how the historical origins of Lyme disease were determined. But I don't really think that's it because this whole thing about historical origins, we don't talk about the history of it until the last paragraph, and it's only one small bit. I think it's A. It is about how the cause of Lyme disease was identified. And that's correct. Good luck. Use this note-taking guide as you read.